Welcome to Man That's Cooking. In this video, we're going to show you how to make an oven-roasted boneless prime rib, also known as a beef rib roast. So for this recipe, we're going to cook to temperature, meaning we're going to always measure the temperature of this rib roast, and we're going to take it out of the oven once it reaches our desired temperature, and that's going to be 125 degrees Fahrenheit. If you don't have a thermometer, you can still cook by time. We're going to give you a rough guesstimate. This is a 7-pound rib roast. We put it in the oven at 200 degrees Fahrenheit at 2:40 p.m. Took it out of the oven at 7:15 p.m. So that's roughly about 4 hours, 35 minutes. And that's roughly 39 minutes per pound. It's also going to be a good idea to have a cooling rack with a cookie sheet. We're going to use this when we salt and dry brine this prime rib, and then when we cook, you're going to need a 12-inch cast iron skillet. So the first thing to do is look and see if you need to do any trimming, and trimming is optional. You can leave all this fat, but what we're after here is to get rid of some of this silver skin and also some very hard fat. You can feel around and see if that fat's really like solid, and you could shave some of that off if you want to. Now you have to be careful because you can go too far and you can expose some of the meat, and they call that a shiner, but it's not a terrible thing. It's not gonna, it's gonna taste great in the end. It doesn't matter. Next, and this is also optional, but we're going to cut this cross-hatch pattern through the fat. This is going to allow the fat cap here to render down and flow through these channels. Some of the seasoning is going to get into these channels. And I don't know, if you're crafty, you could play chess on it. So try not to cut too deep at all. You just want to do like a light surface cut on that fat cap if you're going to make that crosshatch cut. And then what you want to do is you want to use kosher salt, and you want to salt all the sides of this beef generously like this. Then place this in your refrigerator for at least 24 hours. You can go up to 4 days if you want. So this is a type of dry brine, and what it's going to do is it's going to let the salt get deeper into the meat, and it's going to help the meat become more tender around the surface areas, and it's going to add more flavor. So it's been 24 hours, and there is a 12-inch cast iron skillet on medium heat. And man is gloving up right here with some cotton liner gloves for heat protection with nitrile external gloves. That's because we're about to get pretty hands-on here with the rib roast. Now if you don't have these gloves, that's fine. You can do anything, like you can use clean dish towels, you could use tongs. But just so you know, these gloves, they're cheap. I mean, you can get them on the Amazons without breaking your budget for sure. So using this cat laser pointer thing, we're looking at above 500 roughly, and that's what you want to get at. That's a good temp to brown this on all sides. So you want to start with the skinniest side of the beef down first into the pan, just like this. And that is excellent for melting down beef fat into the pan. You're not going to need to add any oil to the pan. We're just going to use natural melted beef fat. Now, if you have any smoke detectors nearby, you're going to want to turn them off if you can, or at least open a window, get a fan going, because this is going to trip your smoke detectors. But hey, if your smoke detector doesn't go off, you need to check the batteries. Definitely don't want the fire department showing up on this one, because, then you have to share. So at these temperatures, it should take about 2 to 4 minutes per side on the surface. You know, something like this right here where it's curved, just rock it back and forth like this. And at this point, you're really just kind of doing this by visual color. Now, believe it or not, this is like the most difficult part of this cook. And if you didn't notice, it's pretty hands-on. So just continue to brown every side, including the sides. And this is where it's probably going to be a little difficult with tongs. And I mean, that also depends on the size of the rib roast that you purchase. So you might want to consider using something else, maybe some silicone heat gloves as well. That could be a good option. But you don't want to skip out on this step. This is a pretty important step to making sure that this rib roast comes out perfectly brown. You know, it's going to get brown in the oven too, but this is going to add to it and make it look awesome. But once you get it done, just set it aside, and it's time to add some seasoning. You know, obviously we don't need any salt. Salt's been taken care of, so we're going to use 3 additional seasonings. At this point, we've got some powdered garlic. We've got some 16 mesh black pepper. I know that sounds fancy. If you don't have that, just use some regular black pepper. And we also have some fresh rosemary that's been diced up finely with a chef's knife. If you don't have fresh rosemary, you can use some dried Italian seasoning or les herbes de Provence. If you do have dried rosemary, just break it down into smaller bits with a chef's knife. But ideally, fresh is best, and rib roasts are not cheap, so you may as well spend the extra couple bucks on fresh rosemary. So let's talk about tying or trussing this rib roast with butcher twine. You do this to keep the beef in a consistent shape, and that helps it to cook evenly. It also makes it more aerodynamic. And normally you would do this before browning it or roasting it. In this video, we're not going to tie or truss this rib roast, and we're going to show you the results in the end, and you decide. Now here's a hint. You're not going to notice any difference. But we're going to talk you through a quick example. Basically, you would make loops and tie each one, running a piece to the next loop. And once you get to the end, you run a piece down and tie that piece, wrap it around over and under each loop, and then tie it at the end. Plenty of videos online if you really want to do it, but we're skipping it, and it's going to come out just fine. But now we're going to get high tech. Insert the probe right through the center, just like that. And then we're going to place this in the oven, which is running at 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And you want to make sure this wire isn't crimped when you close the door. And then set the alarm at 125 degrees Fahrenheit. So this cook took about 4 hours and 30 minutes to reach 125. And when it did, we take it out of the oven. And then you want to loosely tent it or cover it with aluminum foil. And then you need to let it rest for 30 minutes under that foil. While it's resting, something called carryover cooking is going to take it from 125 to maybe around 130, 135. Because it's still hot, okay? And it's a decent sized piece of meat. So you want to let it rest. If you sliced into it right away, all the juices are going to come out, and it's not going to work out very well. Alright, so it's rested, and let's slice in and see what we get. Sometimes the ends of a rib roast are not pink. I mean, they might be a little grayish color. In this case, it's pink. Now, if you have that family member that's, ooh, I want it well done, well, they're going to be out of luck, and you're going to need to put some of these into that skillet and just cook it for a minute or two. But as you slice in deeper, it gets prettier and prettier. Look at the color of that meat. You can see the fat is not underdone. It's not the, gross and hard. I mean, if you're into eating the fat, it's nicely flavored and a good texture. So remember, we skipped the butcher twine hog tie method, and it looks like everything cooked pretty evenly without that string. And notice how there's not like a pool of liquid. That's because we let it rest. If you don't let it rest, you're going to this thing will be swimming in a pool of red liquid. So it's best to slice this to serve, meaning keep the remainder piece whole. If you cut all the pieces, all the slices that you need for tonight's meal, great, leave the rest of it whole. Don't slice the whole thing at once. I mean, that is convenient for eating off of it later, but it keeps better if you keep it whole. So take a look at that. I mean, this came out perfect. It was easy to do. You just need a couple pieces of equipment to help you make an amazing rib roast. Get that thermometer. If you don't have one, just buy one. So hey, thanks for watching this video. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out at manthat'scooking.com. Click like, click subscribe.